They're putting tents up in parks, and it's like, well, it's a public park. They're part of the public. How is that against the law?
I think it's a sense of community for people. That's why I think you see a tent city, because people do need people.
I think what we need to focus on is the solutions. I think that we all know what the problems are. It's in everybody's face.
To give someone a sleeping bag in the middle of winter and say, this is all I can do for you is exhausting sometimes, and it really burns out our team, and it sticks with you.
I'm still a citizen of this country. I pay taxes in this country. I need your help. Imagine, I always tell these people, imagine if you were me. Let's transfer the roles.
I oversee several housing programs, specifically a couple youth shelters, and we have some outreach teams that work with our homeless population in the community.
I have been a municipal law enforcement officer in the Waterloo region for the past 9 years. There's definitely some visible homelessness in our city, in the core areas specifically. So I'd say that it's a pretty prevalent issue.
I'm participating in this based on the fact that I want to tell people my story, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, when there is a light at the end of the tunnel, you have to live in darkness. And I lived in darkness, and I got that, you know, to the end of that tunnel, and I'm still trying to keep on going, but I'm doing it because maybe if I can change this, and I'm not asking for a huge percentage, but if I can just change one person's life, that they listen through this message that I'm about to tell them about myself, I guess I've accomplished something, or we've accomplished something.
I'm a business owner. I roast coffee for a living, and we're in a kind of busy section of the town where we've picked a kind of a cool location for our business. It's in a back parking lot where a lot of things happen in that back parking lot.
Because I'm on fixed income and market rents are outrageous, I'm always like I mean, what I get in income, more than half of it a month goes to, like 3/4 of it go to my rent. And it's always, you know, like I'm always scrambling. What can I do to get more income coming in? And yeah, so kind of I'm on the edge. Like I feel like if I don't keep doing things to generate more income, then I could be the next one on the street.
I was a pretty good athlete coming out of high school. I ended up going to school in the States on a full ride scholarship. And here I am, I got the American dream. I got a wife, 2 beautiful kids, I got a beautiful house. She got in trouble, and eventually she didn't want to do nothing to do with me no more, which I don't blame her. I mean, it took me almost 1.5 years, maybe 2 years to figure out why she left me. I moved back to Canada, and just haven't been right since I moved back. I got back into my addiction, which is alcohol, and it just progressed and progressed and progressed. I stopped believing in myself. I lost a positive in Simon, the old guy. You know, being a former football player, I always believe if you can't win, don't step on the field. And that will was gone in me. It was gone. And I remember one time we're playing a football game, and my buddy's sitting next to me, Keith, and we turn around and there's all these people in the stands, and we're looking at him, and I'm thinking, you know what, Keith? Every one of those people in the stands want to be us. They want to be on this field. They want to be somebody. Now, fast forward 25 years later, where I was at, being homeless, there ain't nobody in those stands want to be me.
In the last 5 years, I've really noticed a major surge in homelessness. I would say that it's much more visible in the streets, in the core areas particularly. When I first started in bylaw, homelessness was a far more minor issue that we had to deal with. And within 2 or 3 years of me being in the enforcement world, I really noticed a large increase in homelessness and tents and the people in the core areas.
What I keep hearing is, oh, I never go downtown, even from community and citizens, because it's so bad down there. But it's not. But that's the struggle that the municipalities have to get over. That's the hurdle, because as people are coming down and into the community, they are passing Tent City. They are passing, along the bikes and trails, taking your kids, and there's someone there who's been there all night and, has all their worldly goods with them. So that's what is happening. That's what we're seeing. And everyone is going to see it. It's not just in Toronto, right? It's not just in Vancouver. It's not. We all know it's everywhere. You hear it on the news. So that's the hurdle that I think municipalities are trying to promote their cities, go, yay, come visit us. We're growing. We're still doing great. But we have this homeless problem, and it's very visible, and it's right here.
There's a misperception that people are being dropped off in buses into our community and lots of other communities, and that's not what's happening. I think we're seeing impacts of a global pandemic. We're seeing impacts of significant impacts of affordable housing opportunities.
I stayed at a place, a motel here. It was horrible. It basically was a glorified shelter where they stole from us. They were taking people off the streets, ODSP, OW, whatever, charging us for this the Big 8 motel. At one time it was a Big 8 or Super 8, whatever you want to call it, charging us $1,700 a month. My toilet broke down, 8-9 days to fix it. Air conditioning, heating didn't work, but yet they were taking $1,700 a month from me and my roommate and just didn't care about us. And I'll be honest with you, I'm an ODSP, but if I pay that rent at $850, I don't have much left.
It can feel frustrating at times because, we're trying to help, but there's limited options that we can give to people. So we may just be asking someone to move along from a certain location, and whether or not they have a tent or their belongings with them, then we would be asking them potentially to vacate a certain area and seek shelter either with family or with some of the housing options that are available from the region. But I would say that overall it's there is some sense of helplessness from the enforcement community because we can only offer so much resources and assistance to the homeless community.
When we're working with our outreach team, we're finding a lot of barriers for our clientele in accessing shelters. So whether it's rules or regulations related to shelters, whether it's bed availability, so there's oftentimes the beds are filled in our programs, and then also trauma and stigma related to accessing shelters and what the shelter system actually looks like. Having to share bedrooms with strangers is a barrier, so clients are choosing not to access shelters sometimes because of that. So being able to have options that provide some privacy and also some supports to have partners there, or there's a lot of barriers related to animals and pets that people have, and that's a barrier to accessing shelter system as well.
If we're not providing enough housing for people, then I think that they have every right to camp wherever they want. And anybody who has an issue with it should maybe give a little try to homelessness. And every time you think that you've found a spot where you can at least feel somewhat safe in a tent, they're being asked to move.
said, it's not Simon. Simon would never be like that. It happened. Part of it was my mental issue, like when you sit there, like think about this. I lost my brother and my dad 7 weeks apart. I was losing my business. I was about to get divorced. Taking care of my mother, 6 hours away because I lived in the United States. If that wasn't enough to like just give up, but I did it, and I persevered through it as much as I could.
We all know when you lose hope, it's really hard to get back up, to even like nourish yourself, let alone try and find work or, you know, a place to live, to turn things around. And there's no supports for that. I mean, there may be some, but it's not enough. And I think that there has to be a lot more happening in the mental health part of it. But I definitely think that hopelessness it kind of keeps them in that same situation.
I was in the shelter in Cambridge. We had a situation there, which I'm assuming, you know, police officers come there a lot. A guy walked in, it was a guy I played college football with. He was a sergeant. And he said, "Simon, what are you doing here?" And I lied, and I said I was a volunteer. Because I felt that shame, that guilt. Here I am, like, you know, and he's talking to me, like, "Well, yeah, man, remember those times?" And I'm sitting there going, uh-huh, mm-hmm. But it was also negative towards me because all of a sudden everybody in there thinks I'm talking to these cops like I'm some, you know what I mean? So it turned out to be a little bit of a negative that night. But yeah, I mean, I guess the hardest part about this whole thing and this journey of being in this group is coming out and saying, you know, I'm not ashamed. It is what it is. I am who I am, and this is what I'm going to do.
I think we need mental health support so strongly, right? Because if you've lost everything, how can you get yourself back together, right? You need people to help you. Social services and a safety net for people. There is people who will never, ever in our society be able to be helped. I believe that. An 80-20 rule. There are people who will never be better. So how do you help that? And the people that can get better need just to know how to navigate that system.
So I think that in terms of people that want help, one of your other interviewers said that 80% of the people are interested in help and can be helped, whereas maybe 20% are beyond help. And that's a challenge for a lot of people. It's a challenge for society and law enforcement and government, is what can be done with that other percentage of the population that simply doesn't want help or can't be helped. And I think that it's a very difficult question to answer.
If I believed that people were beyond help, I couldn't go do what I do every day. I will never believe that. I think, and that is why I can get up every day and go to work and do what I do, because I don't believe that. And I've seen firsthand the people who have been labeled as beyond help, who are incredible human beings and are doing amazing things right now. And some of them are my peer support workers. And I think, and those are the people that can bring support and guidance and hope for the clients that I'm working with. But I could never believe that people are beyond help.
There's a reluctance from their community to accept help, and that they can be very challenging to deal with. So you can try to help somebody, but they're not receptive to it. They are hostile in some cases. They can be aggressive or rude, and it leads to frustration, in the enforcement community, where you're trying to help somebody, but they simply don't really seem to want it. So I think that's a big challenge.
I don't think anybody is beyond help. I think that we need to look at what has happened to them. Like when you experience trauma, We don't know, and I'm not a therapist, and I'm not trained, but if somebody has experienced horrific trauma, and we know that people have, then we need to just work with them. And is it going to take longer? Yes. And do they need more help? Yes. But they deserve it. They're human, just like me. We deserve to be treated as a human being. So whatever help they need is what they should be getting, because nobody is that hopeless.
A lot of the time when I talk about my clients, they are invisible people. So they are being forced by bylaw or police to move into the shadows. And my team's, a lot of our work is just finding people and trying to engage with them because they aren't seen. I think there's a lot of stigmatizing. They feel judged, they feel invisible. When I talk to people that we work with, that is the biggest piece. They are told, if you are invisible, we will leave you alone. So if you don't make noise or you stay off the corner or we don't have to see you, then we won't throw all your belongings away or we won't bother you. And as soon as you're visible, then we're going to move you along. So I think they feel like they're invisible people. They don't feel like they have a voice.
You know, some of my buddies are going to see this. They don't even know my situation. A lot of my friends have not come visited me. You know why? Because I won't let them come visit me. Because I don't want them to see what I am. Now, I'm in a good spot now, but where I was a month ago, nah, my buddies would never believe it. And I had to lie to a lot of people where I was in my situation, and it hurts me. And because they still see the old guy, the old Simon, right? Yeah, they never seen Simon on the street. I've never begged, I've never jumped in the dumpsters or anything. But you know, I've done other things and passed out and drank and but, yeah, it ruined my life, man. I mean, I was ready to give up.
I've thought about how, you know, you've got families coming to your restaurant and someone's sitting on your front doorstep and it's during, you know, your operating hours and all of a sudden someone's sitting there and they can't be there, right? Because people aren't going to come into your store, where it's a fear of businesses, right, that they won't come into your store. So I think I have been bold and I'll say, I'm sorry, you got to go. You got to move along. This isn't the right place for you. Or what the city has done is with the officers that come by, they've given us trespassing papers. So you can't trespass in here anymore. Does that do any good? I don't know. What am I going to say? But the officers have said, listen, if you've really had enough of someone, it is your right to say, you can't be here, you've got to go, I can't have you here today. This is a family business.
Why would anybody experiencing homelessness care about, I'm trespassing? I'm trespassing everywhere I go. Because if I'm in the park, you're telling me I'm trespassing. If I'm sitting in a doorway, you're telling me I'm trespassing. So what is that going to accomplish for that business owner, other than getting the person into a rage? I would be pretty angry, you know, like, so no, I don't think trespassing order would do much.
I think when I listened to the owner of the coffee shop, she seemed really supportive and engaged and wanting to help people, but also I still have to serve clients and we still have to serve people. And I think aren't the people that are there who are experiencing homelessness also the same as, why are they valued differently than someone who's not experiencing homelessness?
It's not just my problem. I'm not going to say it's not my problem, but it's not just my problem.
Right now we don't have warming and cooling centers. So something I'm giving clients to keep them safe when it's cold is gift cards to coffee shops, because they have nowhere else to go and there's somewhere they can go and get warmed up and have a bowl of soup or have a cup of coffee when there's nowhere else to go. When everything else is closed, we had on a holiday day when nothing's open, where are they supposed to go? So I think I struggle with that, and I can understand it. And what do we do instead then? If that's the alternative, what do we do, and how are we supporting these people?
The nature of my business is a coffee shop, so yes, it does become a drop center, a warming center maybe in the wintertime. If you are going to be here and you're staying warm, you've got a coffee, that's great. I keep an eye on a situation. I also keep an eye on the other people who have been, working for 5 hours and are using my space for other reasons. That doesn't make me any money either, and unfortunately I am in it to make some money too. So yeah, the space, you've picked someone who owns a coffee shop. It's notorious for having people sit and stay and chat and feel comfortable, but it's not a drop zone. It's just not. There is warming centers around here, our libraries, there is community centers that stay open. So maybe me as a business owner should be more aware of where they are so I can direct people to that spot, and maybe with a warm coffee in their hand.
I totally understand the business owner, and I get what she's saying. I do think that there is a way to interact with someone that wouldn't cause them to react in a negative way. Instead of saying, you can't be here today, could we say, listen, it's really busy in here. If I give you $5, could you maybe go and get yourself a coffee and sit somewhere? Like, I don't know. I don't know how to handle it. I'm not a business owner.
People will be, loitering in the downtown cores, or they may be in the parks for too long, and a lot of the time, unfortunately, the best case result that we're hoping for is that they would move along. It's obviously a short-term solution. They leave this point, and without anywhere else really to go, they ultimately end up in another area and become someone else's problem. So it's frustrating from an enforcement standpoint, because I think that bylaw and the police obviously know that it's only a temporary solution. If we could, we would definitely offer a better, longer term solution.
I don't think it's easy for the officers or the bylaw officers. I don't think it's easy. I wouldn't want to be in their position. I don't think that a police officer or a bylaw officer should be the one engaging with these people, because it's just another barrier. They're being forced by someone else to get out of the way. We don't want to see you. I don't think the police are trained to be in situations like that, and I definitely don't think a bylaw officer is trained. Is he or she really capable of dealing with a situation like that? I think we put it on the wrong people.
I think that if you were to put the cost of policing and law enforcement and all these temporary short-term solutions is far higher of a cost than if you were to just put in place a few well-running, high-performing systems that are going to work properly. So if you look at the cost of providing housing on the long term and all the policing costs in the short term, I really think that the costs are much higher to constantly police and put people in and out of the hospitals and dealing with paramedics and fire. All those costs really add up, and I think they're hard to quantify.
There's a real crisis. There isn't any place for people to go, and we're getting into winter. So where are they? I have 2 security cameras, for example, in my business. One on the front door, one on the side door. I turn it on every once in a while to just see live footage. And I've seen 3 times in the last month someone setting up in my little entranceway. I'm not going to come back down to the store, but I'm thinking in the back of my mind, maybe that was one of the people that were in that park who now, where do they go? Because they keep being shuffled around.
You can't just move people around. We can make them a private island. You can't just, let's fix the problem. I think what people do now, they put Band-Aids on it. That's what they're doing.
We need to invest in support systems that will create these spaces. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair for anybody, but I also know that resources are limited, and unless you start investing in this, nothing's going to change. So if there's no warming and cooling center, if there's no safe consumption site, all those places are going to be made, we're going to fill that gap somehow, and whether that's a coffee shop or a corner on the street, those gaps need to be filled. There's still people still need to go somewhere. So if we don't have the resources to do it, then we'll find other options, and it's going to be those spaces.
Where should they be going during the day? They really need to have resources where people can do job training or work on their mental health, get counseling, get resources, have a shower, get your hair cut, things like that. Maybe they have some hobbies they can work on. Maybe there's a wood shop, maybe there's a craft studio, something like that. People just need something creative and constructive to do with their time during the day where they feel like they can belong. They're not in someone's way, or they're not trespassing, and they're not being a nuisance.
When we talk about spaces for people who are experiencing homelessness, having a space where they can leave their belongings is really important. So most of our people that we're working with are walking around with their entire worldly possessions with them, and that's scary. And the other piece to those services, I think, is just having clear expectations and rules and boundaries, so people are understanding of that, and a space where we have people with lived experience who are present and giving people like me ideas on how to make this work. So I can learn everything I want in a book, but I'm never going to walk in their shoes.
I just think people don't give a shit. I think people just give up on people. But people don't understand that that person can be, like, I'm gonna use myself for example. People don't know me as what I used to do in my life and stuff. I've done stuff in my life that people dream of. And I don't want that to be egotistical. I want that to be real. And you don't know me. Sometimes I think politicians just don't care. How do you know who I am? How do you know who you're talking to? How do you know who's next to you? You just never know.
People want to help and people want to see change, but it's also the mentality of a not in my backyard. So everywhere we're trying to put things, nobody wants it there, but also they want us to do something about this perceived homelessness issue in the community, but we have to move them somewhere, and there has to be some opportunities. At the end of the day, you can go home and I tuck my kids into bed and my heat's on and I'm warm, and people don't understand what it's like to hand someone a sleeping bag when it's -20 out or -10 out. And even now, it's already getting cold. What are our options? There are no other options. So at this point, I'm looking for 24-hour coffee shops so I can give someone a break from the cold because there's nowhere else to go. And I don't think people really understand the life and death situation of this. And it's not just in the winter. We just finished the summer with a lot of heat warnings. And it's just as dangerous in the summer as it is in the winter.
In terms of the community response to homelessness that we see from an enforcement standpoint, I can tell you that people are upset, people are angry, they're frustrated. I would say that there's limited sympathy from a lot of residents. They've had a negative interaction with someone from the homeless community, and that's tainted their impression of the entire community. Their opinions made up and they're fed up, essentially. So people call us, as a last resort. They're very frustrated, they're angry, they're upset.
I think your officer mentioned that people just get a mindset. Don't antagonize that. Don't escalate situations. Let's be aware of other people who are having a rough time.
People don't care. People don't treat people like human beings. I'll give you a perfect example. Is when I was going through my downtime living in the shelter, I just didn't care. Didn't shave. Didn't bathe for maybe a week, 10 days. Smelled like crap. And I used to go to places And one time I got kicked out of a bar because they thought, you're a bum. About 3-4 days later, I came back. I was clean shaven. I had a new shirt on, I had my pants on. That same person didn't even know who I was. But people got to realize, doesn't matter if I'm clean shaven with a new shirt on, or this guy here that needs help, maybe, I'm still the same guy.
I think that's where I struggle is why, because my clients, when I give them gift cards, they say, well, sometimes I get kicked out when I go there. Why are you getting kicked out when you're a paying customer like everybody else? What's the difference? Is it the way you're dressed? Like, what is it? What is it? And I think it goes back to the situation in the video when he talked about the way he was treated when he came in scruffed up and dirty, and the next day when he was clean shaven. You're treated very differently depending on how you look to people. And I struggle with that a lot because I don't understand why. I don't understand why that has to be, and I understand that people are still doing it, but I struggle with that.
I think that when you talk to someone firsthand and have a conversation with them and they tell you their personal stories, I think that hits closer to home than just reading about it or seeing it on the news. So I think that it would open people's eyes up into the fact that a lot of these people are not that much different than you or me or someone in your family. It really only takes a few bad things in your life, and the next thing you know, you are on the street. A lot of the people that we meet had successful careers, they had houses, they had families, and through a series of bad luck or bad decisions, health, etc., they've ended up in these really difficult positions. So I think that seeing that is a bit of an eye-opener for people.
The person who is not clean, not shaven, is in that lowest of the low point. I think judging is one thing, or just looking at that person and say, man, how do we help it? And then being torn where that person is in my space that has to be a family space, and nobody wants to sit around you because you are in that position. I've said it before, that person is not feeling comfortable. Maybe that's when that person gets agitated because they're not feeling comfortable in themselves. That was a very poignant moment, I think, in this whole conversation with Simon, comparing those two things, how it made him feel, and on the other side of it, how other people felt about him. I don't think we ever can get away from judging that, though. Unless you just think of the different perspective of how that person is feeling.
At least pretend to care. You know what I mean? At least don't give me lip service. Just do it, man. Come out and do it. When I say I'm going to do something, do it. Don't lie. People say, well, it's not a lie. We just couldn't pass. Don't give me that mumbo jumbo, right?
I know that there is an issue with some of the businesses, and I get it. There's a lot of people who would be terrified to walk into a business when there's, people lying in the doorway or at the side of the doorway. I understand that. I don't think that we need to fear these people. We need to understand their story. They're not sitting there waiting to harm somebody. They have nowhere to go.
I think that the more people we have in our core areas that have nowhere else to go is only going to lead to an increase in the number of incidents that regular people see on a first-hand basis every day, every week. So the fact that you have nowhere else to go, you are basically left to spend your time during the day in the core areas is the main reason why people have these negative interactions.
People walking around who have mental health issues. As a business owner, some of them have come into my store, and that's a very intimidating, very stressful situation to have. I need customers, and that person today can't be here. And if you're not going to listen to me and not be here, I mean, someone threw a chair the other day when I told them, I'm sorry, you can't be here. Threw the chair. So, okay, that got violent. Then police got called, and yeah. So you have to, there's a line that you have to say, yeah, I do run a business. So I do need to have some help here.
Our clients have negative experience with enforcement. So because that's the answer, people call the police and it's always a negative situation. So which is why we need to change the narrative on enforcement and change those relationships and how our clients view enforcement. But also the response anytime they're in public is, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to call the police. It comes in very hostile and negative right away, and then we're expecting a different response when that's the way we're approaching people.
The trouble is happening from a few individuals, not the greater. People who are housed and in the community who have had a really tough experience with someone, maybe a violent experience. I think those happen fewer than maybe they make it out to be, it seems. So I think that has to be addressed by police services at this point, sure, to keep the community safe and keep people who are being housed, who aren't housed, keep them safe as well, right? So it is a balance. I don't think that the majority of people who are experiencing homelessness are violent and drug addicts and are horribly violent people. I really don't see that.
They're not out to cause problems for anybody. They're simply trying to survive. And they are people just like you and I. And if you're that afraid, stay home. Don't walk your dog. Sorry, I know I might sound really cold, but like they're not going to jump out and grab your dog and throw it in the river and just go for a walk with your dog.
I think for someone to say that if you don't want to see homelessness, then just stay home, don't go out for dinner, don't walk your dog. I think that's not really helping the situation because it's allowing those behaviors to continue and it's not really helping with find a solution. I don't think that people should have to stay home and avoid problems. There's a balance there, but I don't think that everyday citizens should have to stay home and hide.
So in terms of saying someone should walk the dog in a different part of town, I don't think that's helpful because you can't avoid it. And the more people that are walking downtown with their dog and their families, and we have community support where, maybe the main street is blocked off and we said yes to 1 year, a second year, a third year of that happening. More families are coming. Do they see some situations that aren't pleasing to the eye? Sure. But even that might be happening less and less as people realize that it's there and that maybe those people are going to say, well, I really need to help and maybe give more to the shelter and maybe help more at the food bank. Because I see it in my community, wow, it's not just on the news. So I don't think people should avoid it.
It's understanding everyone's point of view and how do we find a happy medium in the middle. Because I think regardless, it's going to be in someone's backyard, and we also want those people invested in this because I don't want it to be a situation where people are feeling uncomfortable and unsafe in their own community either, because they are also community members, and a lot of it is breaking down the stigma and helping them understand. One of the important things that we've done is invite community members into our space to see what it's like in real life. Oftentimes we fear things that we don't know. So being able to visualize a space, visualize a shelter, visualize a warming and cooling center, what does that look like inside? It's not as scary as we make it out to be in our minds. And then when you invite people in, it also normalizes that. So it's no different than my living room and at home is the living room you're gonna see at the shelter that I operate. And I think being able to put a picture to that concern sometimes changes that narrative a little bit.
take a whole bunch of people who are experiencing poverty and put them in one place. Give them, but let's all live together. And so somebody who's experiencing poverty can then look and say, wow, you know what? I can get myself there too. But you have to be given an opportunity. Sleeping in a tent, that's not opportunity at all. That's degrading.
You realize that your municipal government can't do much to mandate things when we're all like, where are the police? We need more police officers. We can't police out of this. They need to be proactive, I think. This is what I've seen anyway. Proactive with championing the fact that we need more outreach workers. It's not a policing job.
I think one of the things that she commented on in her video was about the need for outreach workers and outreach teams, and I agree with that 100%. So I think people just need to be understood, and I can still understand why people might be uncomfortable when we don't understand those pieces, but we need to be supporting people where they're at, and outreach teams are going to do that. This isn't an enforcement issue. If we can continue to police it, and nothing's going to change because it hasn't worked, and we know it's not going to work. But if our outreach teams if we have funding to do what we need to do for outreach, we can connect people back to other resources or other supports. But that's where it starts, and having places for people to go, which is a barrier right now, and that is going to increase visibility. And increase people's uncomfortableness, I guess.
I'm very fortunate now where I have a worker, my worker, who's very passionate. She's a very good person. It was a major crisis here that we had here at this hotel I was living at, and she was always there for me. Simon, whatever I can do, just keep me posted, and she helped me get out.
So what does the in-between, the short and the long term look like? If you look at some of our downtown areas where these homeless camps are, there is a plot of land that's essentially a vacant parcel. You've got people's belongings. You've got limited sanitary facilities. So how could we improve upon that in the medium range as a potential solution? Well, you could have, number one, semi-permanent sanitation, showers, washrooms that aren't porta potties. You could have a better garbage and recycling system. You could have, better barriers, physical barriers around a site, and you could have a roof over top of their head so that they're not constantly being exposed to sun, rain, and soon enough snow.
They can't be outside of a downtown core. I'm not about that. They're trying to stay together so that they don't have to be separated. So I think that's something to really think about, is they need to be kind of close to amenities and a downtown core so that accessible transportation, they can get to a job. So I don't think putting people out in the middle of nowhere is an answer, of course, right? We need them to be close by. If we ever do have a safe consumption site and they allow that to happen, they need access to that. It has to be somewhere close by to them. So those are some of the real important needs, I think, when we consider housing people. People
look at me now. I can go walk into a bar right now, they're gonna look at me like, oh yeah. But if I walked in the way I used to be, like I had a big scraggly, I looked like one of those guys on, what do they call the Duck Commander? I had a beard like that. It was horrible, Mike. It was horrible. But at the end of the day, I'm still Simon. Doesn't matter if I'm that guy or this guy. Doesn't mean I don't have a heart. Doesn't mean you don't have a heart.
I know we have people who say, oh, we can't afford that, and why do taxpayers always have to, cough up? But if we don't, then what are we saying as individuals and as a society? That they don't matter? Because they do matter. I mean, if it was your brother or your sister, how would you feel? You know, like I would do everything I could to get them the help they needed, to get them to a place where they felt better about themselves, where they felt safe, where like I would do whatever I could.
Be aware, understand the facts of homelessness is what I really want people to do. If you don't know, you know, you can go to the food bank and the shelter. They'll show you around, they'll tell you so that you know the answers. It's not scary. And then you realize, wow, I can do a small part. And a small part does make a big difference.
I think that it's important for everyone to try to put yourself into other people's shoes. So we're so often stuck in our own viewpoints and our own experiences, but try putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And I think that one of the other interviewers said, well, go down to the homeless camp and see what it's like for yourself, and you know, would you go there? So I think that experiencing the lives of some of the homeless community firsthand, even if it's just for 10 minutes or 45 minutes, and seeing what they are dealing with would go a long way in terms of trying to find a solution or wanting to find a better solution.
I ask myself often, and I challenge my staff often, would you put your own kids in that bed? And how does that feel? And I think it's just looking at it differently. These are someone's kids, or these are someone's father, these are someone's family members. And a lot of us are a few paychecks away from being in the same situation.
We get a lot of people that don't like these programs, that don't like these things. And a lot of people will say, do these programs help? You know what my answer is to that question? And then I'll end it here. Does it help? I'll look right in the camera. I'm still breathing, right? That's all I got to say.